Well, hello there, motherfuckers. And as promised, I'm here with your full Captain America Civil War review. And, people have wasted no time. I gave my first impressions video last night, which was technically today because I posted the video really late at night. I had seen the movie with two of my friends who enjoyed the film, as I previously explained. I was the odd man out. I did not enjoy this movie. I disliked it quite a bit, as I expressed. You guys saw that I was already getting a little bit annoyed discussing it. Some of that same passion that we saw from me just almost exactly a year ago with Age of Ultron. And this movie did remind me a lot of Age of Ultron. It really did, and that's what brought out a lot of anger. And also was how now we're going to have to look at Batman versus Superman being a bad movie because the critics panned it the way they did. And it doesn't matter, there's a certain group of people. I know there's a couple of people with me that think that BVS was actually a good film and that it got a really bad shake for whatever reason. It's really funny. As much as I posted videos about Batman versus Superman, the review and the message to the haters video, nobody could come up with a real sustainable reason why they dislike the film. And the argument that they tried to do too much dies because all the people that said that that movie tried to do too much, and it had a weak story behind it. Well, all those arguments die if you're a fan of Civil War. Because if you're a fan of Civil War and you dislike Batman versus Superman and you're one of those fans that was really vocal about it, you don't have a leg to stand on in this argument, pretty much. This movie's plot is probably the dullest I've ever seen. It gets all wrapped up in politics. They spend the first hour completely boring the shit out of us. I'm not even kidding. This movie was was very boring in the first hour. And in comparison, I'm sorry to everybody who hates them. I'm continuously bringing up Batman versus Superman, but you gotta understand that movie didn't come out. It came out just a little bit more than a month ago, so I'm still reeling from everybody's reaction to it. Having to battle everybody on here to explain myself, even though I did a pretty good job in my review, I felt of explaining why I enjoyed the movie. And people said the plot didn't make sense, and I have to ask people to pay attention. Not that this plot didn't make sense; it did, without a doubt. The plot did make sense. Without it was a boring plot. Those are two different things. Saying that the Batman versus Superman plot didn't make sense, it was pretty clear. And if you really need an in-depth explanation, I really encourage you to check out my review because I got to pat myself on the back. Do a pretty good job of explaining the plot and why Batman versus Superman are fighting each other. And I'm not going to get into that here because we're not reviewing that movie. We're reviewing Civil War. It's just in comparison. I have to compare it here because it's the same people who were knocking Batman versus Superman that are praising it, and it's pretty much the Marvel fanboys. Now, before I get into my reasons, and I've got a bunch compiled right here in front of me, as I said I was going to do, because I don't normally write a lot of things down. I don't really write a lot of talking points. A lot of people notice that I don't really look down. I don't really have notes with me because I usually like to shoot from the hip. But I always end up forgetting something, or I wish I phrased something a certain way. So I kind of wrote a couple of things down, got a couple of little cheat notes. I don't have a script, of course, but I never do. These are always totally unscripted, and there's no cuts in here. So, like everybody else is going to have a nice fancy video where they really get to think about what they want to say because they have a whole script in front of them. And anybody who's new to these videos, you need to understand that about me. I'm not reading off of a script. So if I don't um put something in a certain way and it's not absolutely perfect, it's really due to that reason. And I actually pride myself on not having cuts in my videos like the majority of the major YouTubers on here, which is sometimes why these videos have sections like this where I'm explaining and talking and everything, and it might be chalked up to going off on tangents and ramblings. But if you notice, everything always interconnects to itself. The videos might run long, but always in the end, it always reaches a conclusion. I always feel like when I do reach the conclusion, everybody should understand where I'm coming from, and a lot of people do. It's just some of the people don't choose not to watch the whole video. That's unfortunate. I really would advise people, please don't comment if you're not going to watch the whole video and hear everything that I have to say, because you just make yourself look like a giant fucking asshole. Everybody always does this, because a lot of times then I have to go and respond and say, I said this in the video, I said that in the video, you just weren't paying attention. You need to really listen to what's being said in order to fully understand my arguments. Okay. So, first off, with this film, I've got to get this out of the way, is that this movie, calling it Captain America Civil War, was a huge, massive, false advertisement. And they should really be ashamed of themselves. All this was, not even a year has passed since the Avengers movie. They just couldn't help themselves. They had to take one of the character driven movies, which is usually what these solo stories are referred to as character driven movies. Iron Man 1, 2, and 3, Thor 1 and 2. The list goes on and on. Ant-Man, all those films. Those are all the character driven movies from the Marvel Universe film series, whatever they call it now. And what they did here was make this so much not a Captain America film and so much more an Avengers film that it has no right to be called the Captain America movie, because there's like just a lot of parts where Captain America is just not featured prominently enough. Uh, if anything, to me, this movie is more of the Iron Man show. It truly is. They really, really were very off base calling this Captain America, because it was anything but. And the way the script was formatted, the lines that Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr., was told to speak, or maybe he ad libbed some of them. Some of them kind of sound like ad libs, sound like something from Robert Downey Jr.'s personality. And that's the thing. What I also had said in my Iron Man 3 review way back when, I said maybe sometimes Tony Stark is more Robert Downey Jr. than Tony Stark, because sometimes he really just comes across more as just that eccentric Robert Downey Jr. than more the Tony Stark that we're used to from the comics. Because I mean, everybody is always the comics, the comics, the comics all the time, and that's the thing. I saw it in the comments section. It was really just one person, thank God, but many people will probably follow. Did you even read the comics? I understand where people are coming from about reading the comics, but I don't want my movies scripted word for word the way the comics are. I really don't understand this argument that people have where it has to be exactly like the comics. It's enough already. And the Marvel fanboys are annoying about it. No, I actually never did read any of the Civil War um, comics that were in that storyline. But does that mean I'm not allowed to review the film? I mean, that's preposterous. I mean, it's like the same thing like Batman versus Superman. People were complaining it wasn't enough like the comics. They drew from a bunch of comics. Look, guys, people were kind of pressuring me. They were saying that, oh, I didn't say enough bad things about Batman versus Superman. I really wasn't bothered by a lot in that movie. And what people understand, it's opinion. These videos that I make, that's what it is. It's how I feel about the movie. I wasn't personally bothered. as you guys know, I'm not getting anything out of that. It's gonna, if anything, make me unpopular because the critics and a lot of fans are displeased with the movie. Now, here's the thing. I've even got the DVD right here. When I was about 8 years old, I bought the graphic novel, the compiled comics that went into the death of Superman. It was in Action Comics. It was in Man of Steel. It was in I believe Adventures of Superman. All the different Superman comic series, and a lot of times, you would see the stories with I don't think it's like that anymore, but they would always interlock with each other. You'd have Avengers of Superman, Man of Steel, and everything would just kind of intertwine itself and continue from one issue to the next. And that's how they used to be able to get the comics out. It was different series, and they kept pumping it out through different comics, even though they were all about Superman. So here we have it. Haven't even opened it up yet, but Superman versus Doomsday. Do you guys know how much I want to see like this this comic, this animated film turn into a movie? But I was still happy with the fact that we even did get Doomsday, and I think he was portrayed pretty well, pretty dominant. And I didn't really like the way how Doomsday looked. And see, hey, that's the thing. Didn't I say in my BVS review that I wasn't thrilled with Wonder Woman? That I wasn't, that I kind of wish that maybe Doomsday was, kind of, that it was more like Death of Superman. They could have maybe saved that for a separate film. But they did dedicate a big half an hour to a huge battle with Doomsday. And I'm not saying I critiqued it fairly. I said maybe it could have been this way, it could have been that way, but not everything's perfect. And I pretty much enjoyed what I was given, and I didn't like Wonder Woman. I thought that they could have picked somebody way better for that role. Definitely body type wise and personality wise, and there was a lot of different things about that film, such as Wonder Woman being so tech savvy when she's more tribal, and wouldn't really be so like such a tech head when you really think about it. Um, but for the most part, I really did enjoy that film. Even though I'm saying I would like it to be more like the comics, I would like Wonder Woman to be more like the comics, but it's just I couldn't sit there and ignore Ben Affleck's great performance as Batman, for example, and he was even better than Christian Bale in some parts. In fact, one of my friends that I did see this movie with, the same one that I mentioned in my first impressions review, that pointed out the fact that Captain America and Black Panther were running faster than the cars, and that Captain America actually stole a car. I didn't even notice that. Like I said, I'm not really going to comment on it because I didn't really notice it that much. There were some parts where, kind of like, when you're watching something and you're just so bored, you don't even realize when certain things are going on, they're just flying over your head. That's maybe just on me. I wasn't watching it with enough of a critical eye, at some parts. And of course, people are probably going to bash me because I just stated that, and I'm willing to admit it. But yeah, I do know the section he's referring to. He enjoyed Batman versus Superman, and he was the one that actually pointed that out to me, that Ben Affleck was more comic book accurate than Christian Bale. I wanted to just point that out really quickly. So yeah. Anyway, you've got Tony Stark just completely overshadowing Captain America, Chris Evans here, and it was just pretty ridiculous. It really was. Now, okay, Helmut Zemo. Okay, so this guy is your main villain in the film, without a doubt. It was just disappointing. This guy's got it out for the Avengers because there was collateral damage. His family got harmed in the Avengers, big battle, and now he's out to get them. Of course, they have the Accord now that is being put in place. They're informed. The Avengers team is informed that they have to act in accordance with the United Nations. They have to have a government body that they work under. Um, Now, this is really interesting, and I really have to ask, where is Shield during all of this? What's going on with Shield? Why are we ignoring Shield? We're pretending like Shield doesn't exist, and I have to really say, like, aren't they supposed to operate under Shield? So, I don't really get this. So Hydra is still operating, but you've got this new law being put in place, and I'm not really understanding. That's what I'm saying. Okay, so they're just kind of writing that out in a way. um and maybe I'm missing something there. Somebody try to really explain that to me. Maybe I'm forgetting something from Age of Ultron, and maybe I'm just simply not, but I really need to ask that. I thought that they were acting under Shield. Instead, now they have to act under the United Nations. So anyway, Helmet Zero is, causing all sorts of problems here, and the Avengers want to go after him. But you've got Tony Stark that is standing in the way of Captain America, and so you've got this split. Tony Stark, for some reason, he wants to obey these laws, even though he's more of the renegade. And Captain America is the one that's kind of really acting against the wishes of the nation, which I guess he feels that it's not the patriotic thing to do to just stand down. So I guess that kind of makes him a little bit more inspirational in that role. But this right here gets a little bit sticky. It's kind of like you ask yourself, what's really going on here? Um, what, like, why is everybody acting a certain way? Why does Tony Stark feel he has to side with the government? That's not really explained. See, this is what I'm talking about. This is the explanations I'm looking for. I don't really get how this is a great story. I could see what's going on here, but I don't really get it. And Helmut Zero is just, the guy is a threat, but he's not really like a huge threat. You have all these Marvel villains you could choose from, so why exactly is this guy the villain for the film? And it's like he's just a normal guy, and this is who they got for the film. All right, so I know that he turns into a bigger villain later on, but this is, as I said once again, we're building for future films. I said this. This was my big argument in the Age of Ultron that everybody had a problem with. So here's the thing: we're building for future films. Why can't Helmut Zero be what Zemo? I mean, why can't he be what he becomes later on in this film? It's like we have to sit here and be bored with a bland, boring villain, just so we could wait for him to, progress to the next stage in the next film. I'm gonna tell you something, guys. I don't think that I'm gonna go out to see the next film because I'm getting sick and fucking tired of having to wait around for the payoff. See, this is why I liked Batman versus Superman. They gave you everything you wanted right there in that film, the way how it should be. This is not a comic book. We have to wait 2, 3 years for some of these stories, and when they come around, we end up being disappointed by them. We get these little bits of fan service here and there, and that's good enough for the fanboys, But no, this is not good character development. This is slow and boring. They had 2.5 hours to work with, and I'm sitting there with a villain, Helmet Zero. This guy's taking out the super soldiers and everything. He's seeking revenge, and it's like, I don't really get why Tony Stark is so reserved here, and why he doesn't want to go against him, but Captain America does. Uh, I really failed to really get into the story because I was so busy asking a lot of questions in my head. And oh yeah, 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 I guess read the comics, Brad, and I'll probably understand. But yeah, but this is the movie, and it's not going to be exactly like the comics anyway. So doing that is not really going to make a lot of sense. And that's the thing. So you're going to sit there and, be entertained by a boring villain that doesn't really have a lot to offer. Um, he's causing problems for the Avengers, and he's causing that split down the middle. Which I don't even think he's purposely doing. Um, but I don't know why they went and this is the thing. Everyone is calling for Thanos. They the Galactus, somebody major for these movies, and this is who we have to sit here and watch. Yes, they might be making it comic book accurate, but for a movie, this is not good. This is not exciting. And the way how it's being done, the way how this movie is being laid out and the pacing, it was really a boring, slow film for the first hour. And I couldn't get past it. So, and they throw Black Panther in there, and it's like, he just kind of pops out of nowhere. He just kind of waltzes in there. T'Challa just comes in there, and there's really no explanation about what's going on. His father dies in the movie, and we're kind of just like, we're just really left to think like, okay, we have to sit here and just accept that this character just waltzes in here. The guy's father dies, and it's just like, boom, it happens. And are we caring about this? I mean, okay, so they are going to have a Black Panther movie, and we're going to be explaining this, but it's like, don't you think that maybe they should have had the Black Panther movie before they introduced him right here in this movie? It's like they just couldn't help themselves. They had to have everybody in this film. And, you could say that Batman vs. Superman tried to do too much, but Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman's only there sometimes and she appears at the end. Alexander Luthor, and then Doomsday comes all the way at the end. Does that really seem bloated to you? When look at this fucking movie and how many characters there's in here. This is what drives me insane, drives me up the wall about these arguments. You've got Captain America, you've got Iron Man, you've got Bucky, you've got Black Panther, you've got Falcon, you've got all these guys on the screen, and they're just there. And, there's like no development with anybody. Guys like Falcon are just there, and like they're not even contributing much. Um, Scarlet Witch now is on their side and kind of makes like she's a main Avenger. Iron Man is keeping her on lockdown, and the Vision is just, he's annoying. He really is. I mean, they show this guy as a goody two shoes, and he's pretty much just a servant of Tony Stark. I mean, he was created by Tony Stark, so it does make sense and everything. But I don't know his character. It's like the Vision is there, and he's this all powerful, mighty being. But I just kind of felt like, he's just there, like a piece of furniture half the time. And the guy is given quite a bit of dialogue and quite a bit of on screen time, but it's just like, we don't really get to learn anything about the Vision. Then Hawkeye shows up totally unannounced. And once again, he's there to rescue Scarlet Witch. And you're just asking yourself, like, he's just showing up out of nowhere. How does he even know that Scarlet Witch is there? None of this is even explained. He just shows up out of nowhere. And I'm really asking the Marvel fanboys to really explain this to me. Really, get into detail here and explain exactly why Hawkeye is showing up here. Because it's not explained. Did I miss a line of dialogue? Because let me tell you something. There is so much dialogue in this film. It is so bloated with just bloviating that I just sometimes phase out. And I'm admitting that here. I'm admitting that I probably missed quite a few lines of dialogue because the movie was just really boring me with its pacing. so much going on. There's not enough consistent ideas. Batman versus Superman was giving a lot of consistent ideas, which is really what I didn't understand. If you think consistent ideas are boring, well, that's really too much of a shame for you. And I kind of pity you in a way if you think consistent ideas are really that boring, because right here, this movie's got a lot going on for a little bit too much, and it started to really hurt my fucking head. Like it's kind of like I couldn't keep up with it. The movie was exhausting me, and it's also I'll tell you what wasn't really helping is that this theater was fucking hot. I was pretty much melting. I mean, and there was no air conditioning in there. I've got a movie that's boring the shit out of me with a story that's just. I mean, let's be honest. Okay, the story did make sense, like I said, but there it really took a lot of brain power to really figure certain things out, why they were doing certain things, and there were tons of brain farts in this movie. I mean, it really is. I'm just gonna come out and say it. It's a stupid movie. Go ahead. I know a lot of people are gonna fire back and say, Oh, you're stupid. Oh, good comeback." I'm just pretty much predicting it here, but there's just so much going on, and there's so many like restrictions here. There's laws being put in place, and Scarlet Witch is on lockdown. Like everybody's being told what to do and everything, and it feels like we're in fucking Guantanamo Bay half the time. I mean, it's like this movie's on lockdown. Like it wants to break free, and it doesn't. It just it just gets squandered in litigation. And so much dialogue is just being pounded down on top of you. It's like I really didn't understand like how so many people were just able to really sit there and just really go along with this and enjoy it. Um, it was really just I really felt like I needed a vacation after this movie. It was exhausting. 2.5 hours of just I felt like someone was trying to pull my brain out through my ears, because it was just so many questions, so many things left unexplained, and just I mean, to say that this did not have plot holes, you're fucking dreaming. um Anyway, so the movie does introduce a lot of things. So Bucky is causing a lot of problems here, killing Stark's parents, which also causes a huge battle. They call a truce, but then Helma Zemo shows Tony Stark a video from 1991. They show this in the beginning of the film, and you don't know who these people are. Bucky makes somebody's car crashes and steals some junk out of the trunk, some tech, and it ends up being Tony Stark's parents. He ends up killing them, and so obviously now this is just going to be like an endless war. And this is kind of thrown out there, and it's presented so quickly and so late in the film. It's kind of like once again, you just don't care. It's kind of like Black Panther's father dying. It just happens, and you're not even. It happens so fast. You're not even given the opportunity to care about some of these major moments. There's a huge explosion, somebody's father dies, and we just move on. And it's the same thing with this. It's like Tony Stark's parents, we're told now, are dead, and we just move on, and we just keep moving on to the next scene, to the next fight scene, and we keep on going, and I just, like I said, there's just you want them to focus on one thing happens, and then they're already off to the races with the next idea. I mean, this movie was like, it had fucking ADD. It really did. It just, it couldn't concentrate on one thing, give you enough time to reflect on one thing. And the funny thing is, the movie was moving at a really slow pace. This was like the longest 2.5 hours of my life. And for some reason, they had all this time to explain stuff, get you emotionally invested. And I was not. I mean, this plot was just taking so many twists and turns, and and usually I'm all for twists and turns, but it kept smacking into a wall consistently. And Helmut Zemo, trying to get vengeance on the Avengers. Um, it's kind of like, did he even know that they were going to turn against each other, or was he just kind of hoping for the best here? Because, other than that, he's not really that prominent of a villain. I'm just saying, with all this going on, he's not. I mean, yeah, showing Stark the footage, that was a pretty good method of trying to, stir the pot. But he's just a villain. Like, he can't do anything else. So it's like, oh, look at this video. Get angry at each other. Um, I kind of really just failed to get invested. I was just like, I'm taking a look at this villain, and Zemo is just bland and boring, and he just, to me, just seems like a character actor that's just there. It seems like a side character. It seems more like a henchman than like a main villain. Um, so what else can we talk about? Yeah, so the explanation of the Accords, that just goes on forever in the first hour. The Secretary of State explains to them that they have to act with the United Nations, and that's the reason why they have so much of a problem taking down Zemo. And and we just keep explaining this stuff over and over and over again, and everything is moving at such a slow pace. It was just, it was mind numbing, and I don't really understand. Are some people just kind of scared that if they talk out against this movie that they're just gonna be unpopular? Because I just don't see how people were entertained thoroughly by this film. And we have an opportunity to have a pretty cool villain here. You know, Crossbones. He comes back. He's here, and Captain America is fighting him, and he blows himself up, and that's just about it for any opportunity of having a major villain. I mean, it drives me crazy. Now, as I said, maybe it is due to the fact that if they used a big villain, it would take the focus off the fight between the Avengers. That's probably my best, crack that I could take at it. That's probably why they didn't resort to using a major villain from the Marvel universe, which probably would have been way better. Um, but they wanted to just, I guess, use somebody just as an agitator without really taking a lot of focus off the heroes. I could kind of see that, but it still didn't go as planned. So, like I said, this movie just takes a lot of time explaining itself, way too much time explaining itself, and it leaves me with a lot of questions. I don't really understand why Tony Stark is acting in accordance with the government so much and following the Accords when this guy is pretty much the renegade. I really had a hard time understanding that one premise. Um, as I said, maybe I'm missing something. Somebody please explain to me why Tony Stark feels the need to act the way that he does in this film. So, they end up locking up all the Avengers at one point. But this is not before we have this big battle scene, what we saw in the trailer, the last trailer that was released. Okay, so we see Spider Man, and I already did my video on it. I said this was probably some of the worst looking CGI I've ever seen coming out of 2016. It looked horrible. It looked bad. It looked cheap. It looked rushed. It looked like it was shoehorned in there. As someone put it in one of my videos, yes, Black Panther and Spider Man, you bet your ass, were shoehorned right into the film. And that's probably why Spider Man looks like shit. And why did they put him in there? with CGI, they're saying to make his eyes move, and he just doesn't look like he's there. Sorry, guys, but this is Disney. Correct me if I'm wrong. I just watched a Disney movie, and I saw a fucking wolf touch a human being's head, and I almost got fooled into believing that it was real for a moment. Talking about the Jungle Book, guys. If you want to see some great CGI, that's the movie to go watch. This right here, this was just like some college kid messing around in his graphic design class with CGI. He looked like the Macy's Day balloon float. And that's not to say that he looks like how the parade float does, but it was as if he were a balloon, because it just the way how the suit looked, he just looked very balloonish. Like if you put a pin to him, he'd pop. Uh, and some of you might be laughing at that, but it's not really funny to me. Um, so this is pretty big for me. Spider-Man being in this film, and as you guys see, I was wearing the Spider-Man shirt yesterday. You see Spider-Man right here on me, so you know that I love Spider-Man, my favorite superhero. And I love the Todd McFarlane version of Spider-Man. He had a very different interpretation of Spider-Man, which I appreciated and I liked. It was a darker version of the Spider-Man. So I'm all open for different interpretations of Spider-Man. Now I like the actor that they picked. Not crazy about him. I am going to have to see him in his feature film. I hope that they don't load it up with a bunch of fucking shit like this one. I mean, that this one's called Captain America. Keep that in mind, guys. You see everything that I explained here? This is called Captain America. And you might be like, oh, what does it matter what it's called? No, 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 no. This is supposed to, we were given a movie expecting something to be about Captain America. That was going to be based around Captain America. That was going to be a character driven movie. Now, Winter Soldier was very character driven. We really got a sense of who Captain America was. In the first film, we were just pretty much shown Captain America, a couple of action scenes here and there. Decent movie, decent enough, but really it left a lot to be desired. What kind of a person is Captain America? What are the thoughts running through his head about this transformation? And now, going through this super soldier program, we really didn't get a lot of insight into that. We did in Winter Soldier, and I was so happy with that film. You guys can see I gave it like just a glowing review. I was totally in love with the film. I still am to this day. I think it's one of Marvel's best efforts that I've seen out of them. It ranks up there with Spider-Man 2 with me. I think that it's a phenomenal film, and they just completely went off the rails here. So anyway, back to Spider-Man. He looks horrible. He looks bad. Now, the actor, I believe it's Tom Holland. I might be wrong. Anyway, Tom Holland, something like that. Anyway, so he looks okay. Definitely, he's already getting a little bit older. He's growing into his face more than when they first announced it, when he looked really, really young. So this is a really, really young version of Spider-Man. He's still like a freshman in high school, something like that. I believe he's like supposed to be like 15 years old or something. And I know this kind of goes with the comics in the way, I suppose. I'm not entirely sure. This is not like for the I guess this is out of Ultimate Spider-Man. So he's really young, and they did get the sarcastic side of Spider-Man down. And I even enjoy the part where I think it's Falcon says it to him. He says, you realize that there's not usually this much talk in a fight. Have you ever been in a fight before? And they really, capitalize that Spider-Man is this talkative, sarcastic, over the top superhero, just like Deadpool. Maybe not as like absurd as Deadpool, but they have a lot of similarities. So they really did capture that side of him. Something that in the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man films, the Sam Raimi ones, that they failed to really introduce to the audience that Spider-Man is this funny, quirky. He's got all these one-liners, and we didn't really get a lot of those one-liners in those films, and that's what I did find disappointing. Um, he did capture the essence of Spider-Man. It's just I couldn't get over the fact that how bad the suit looked. And then when he falls to the floor and Tony Stark is standing over him and he's talking to him, it looks like he's wearing a Party City Spider-Man suit. It's made out of cloth. Now, I don't have a problem with a cloth suit. Not all of them have to be rubber, but the suit looked cheap. And I'm just like, we go from one end of the spectrum to the other, where it just looks like it looks so fake. And then we have him basically in a suit that I've seen 8-year-olds wearing on Halloween. Does anybody like 92% on Rotten Tomatoes? Is anybody like paying attention to this stuff? Does anybody like realize like what all these things that I just named and pointed out? Does anybody think about these things? Does anybody look at these things in the movie? No one's getting annoyed with the fact that Spider-Man looks this bad. That like maybe it was an idea if they couldn't get the CGI to look presentable. It is like you guys wanted to complain about some of the CGI used in some of the Star Wars films, and then you want to turn around and then you want to complain and not complain enough about how Spider-Man looks. I mean, guys, this is not like excusable. This looked really bad. And this is like not something like, oh, but Brad, they'll take care of it in the Spider-Man film that's coming out. I'm sorry, they needed to take care of it now or take him out of the film. This was not what I expect out of a multi-million-dollar film. I mean, so much money was poured into this film. And this is what they came up with. This is the best effort they could do to give us Spider-Man. Everybody was going fucking nuts over the trailer. And of course, this is what I expect from the Marvel fanboys and maybe some of the more casual fans. But if you notice my reaction, people just, say that I'm being negative. But here's the thing. I'm watching this movie and I'm seeing something terrible that is not eye catching, something that is just it looks grotesque to me. I'm not going to ignore it. Everybody else will, but you saw my initial reaction to the trailer. It's not having a bad attitude. It's calling a spade a spade. It's calling them as you see them. Something looks bad. I'm not going to get hyped for it. I'm not going to promote it. I'm not going to put it over in my video. I'm going to just pretty much tell you it looked like shit, and it really did. Um, what else do I have written here? So no memorable action. I talked about this in my Age of Ultron video. You've got all these fight scenes going on, and there's just nothing in this film that's really all that memorable. I'm just kind of sitting there being like, okay, it's not like it's bad action, but I'm just really asking for scenes that are memorable. I have to always go back to these same examples to really understand what I mean. A whole bunch of action scenes, that's just wonderful. That's what you want to do in the movie, just kind of entertain people with action. And there's some people that are into that. And I love action. But I love action that kind of like has a purpose for being there, like really entertaining and being really memorable for the audience. And where's the oohs and the ahs? There were no oohs and there were no ahs in this movie. This was just, here's some action. These guys are fighting, and that's about it. There was no Spider-Man 2 stopping the train, in an epic, heroic moment. And I always go back to that scene. And I said that was in large part why, still to this day, Spider-Man 2 is my favorite Marvel film. and I'm always getting attacked for it because maybe it's not the biggest complex plot, and it's not this comic book accurate story. But I said, as far as it went as a cinematic film, it just it really spoke to me, and it's the movie that's memorable. I mean, as many people were unhappy as they were, the Marvel fanboys, and they tried to pass Amazing Spider-Man off as like, oh, like this is the film that's good because it's more like the comics, and I was not buying into it. It wasn't gonna work. I knew what I liked. And the Sam Raimi films, when they first came out, they were getting pretty much praised. And I'm still gonna, I'm still gonna have to really insult people here, and this is gonna be the part of the video where I'm saying here where people are really, really gonna turn against me bad. Spider-Man 3 was more entertaining than Captain America: Civil War. And Spider-Man 3 was a movie that did many, 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 many things very wrong, but somehow, some way, still manage to entertain, give some genuine laughs, and entertain. They might have royally fucked up Venom. They might have really just completely went off the rails in certain sections of the film, as far as it went as it pertained to story, and it was definitely a letdown. Following up the quite not amazing Spider-Man, but the movie was amazing. Spider-Man 2, the one with Doc Ock, the one with Alfred Molina, and Tobey Maguire. That movie still managed to entertain me more, and I really realize it. I'm an odd duck when it comes to these superhero movies. I'm looking for something different than what's being shown in these movies, where it's kind of like a very desperate attempt to give nods to the Marvel comic fans, and they cater way too much to them. They're giving nods. They're trying to make it so comic book style that, and they're just kind of doing it by the numbers at times. They kind of fail to realize that they're making a boring movie a lot of the time, and that's what they're doing here. That must be what it is, because like I said, I never read Civil War, but I'm gonna kind of go and guess here. I'm gonna venture a guess that perhaps they are just following the comic book a bit too much, and it's bogging it down. And this movie felt very bogged down at times. Like I said, just some downright boring moments. But anyway, what I wanted to get back into, so I'm not trying to go through every single Marvel movie here. Spider-Man 2, Stopping the Train, Captain America, Winter Soldier. This is probably the more exact example because this movie is claiming to be a sequel of Winter Soldier. Where was Nick Fury in the battle van? Where was Captain America fighting in the elevator? Then, them breaking through the glass and just jumping to the ground below. Those scenes, though they used some CGI, of course, to, get these ideas across to the audience and into the film, they were pretty fucking awesome. And they were so memorable because, they hadn't been done anywhere before. Here we're just seeing, guys trading fisticuffs. We're just seeing some bland action. There's not really anything happening. We're seeing guys fighting, but there's no scenes that stand out in these fight scenes. See, you put Captain America in an elevator and he's fighting while the elevator is going down, and then he jumps out of it. There's a scene right there where you're not going to forget. It's like so heroic that he's battling all these Hydra henchmen and then just jumping out of it in a heroic feat. It was dazzling. Then you put Nick Fury in a van, where this is one scene where Nick Fury is not having to lift a finger. He's just pretty much trying to survive as the shields are going down on the van. You see something like that, and you're like, you're gonna remember this for the rest of your life, pretty much, because if you're a big time Marvel fan, you love these movies, and you see a scene like that, That's what I'm saying. Did anybody realize that those types of scenes weren't in this Captain America movie? Instead, they went back to the Age of Ultron formula, where it's just this big over the top popcorn blockbuster film where, even somebody who I saw it in the I forget who reviewed it exactly. They in the review they said, and you can see it on Rotten Tomatoes and Wikipedia. Someone said that they didn't even have to try in this movie, and they didn't try. And it's exactly what it was. They didn't even try to do anything unique, memorable, out of the ordinary. It was all very, very ordinary. Um, and the audience that I saw this movie with, they were clapping and they were yelping for things that weren't really that amazing. And that's just how it is. I mean, you know, you want to clap for Spider-Man even though he looks like fucking horse shit. Go right ahead. Yeah, Ant-Man grows big. So you clap for that. Okay, that does look good. But there's just so many moments in there where also the audience was just reacting so strongly to things that really weren't that impressive. And that's why with these Avengers movies, because that's what it is, we've just been conditioned to just really accept the generic and not really all that great material that's being put forth. When they make a genuine effort with Winter Soldier, they deserve to be praised. That was a film where you really felt that it was pretty character driven and you really got a sense of who Captain America was, and you were like, wow, this guy is pretty damn heroic and he's pretty fucking awesome. And when you saw that, you really, you know, you really started to fall in love with the character. And everybody agreed that Winter Soldier pretty much was a great movie, and it was a huge step up from not only the first Captain America, but a lot of other Marvel movies. Compare it to something like Iron Man 3, and you've got a pretty vast comparison there in terms of quality, in terms of story, in terms of a lot of things. That was a movie that just was pretty successful. The way how they introduced Hydra. Here, you see Hydra and they're just sort of off to the side. You're not really seeing a lot of them, and you're just like, where did all these things go? Where did Shield go? Where did Hydra go? Are they on vacation? They're not here at the moment. Should I leave a message after the beep? I mean, like, instead, it's Zemo and a lot of uninteresting scenes, kind of useless dialogue. It takes so long to explain the Accords, and they're just kind of talking over strategy and just, and then there's scenes where the Vision is cooking. Guys, I'm sorry. I must be missing something. Please, I want you guys to list. Maybe I'm missing something with the plot here. I'm not gonna watch this movie again. Even if I miss something with the plot, it was just wow. Uh, I was bored, and I really did not enjoy myself during this film. 2.5 hours, and I expected something exciting, something out of the ordinary, something to really grab me. I saw the overwhelming reviews, and I was like, I gotta see this movie right away. And then I was like, you know what? No. So many plot holes, so much just uneventful shit happening in this movie. Just moments where it just gets. There are some moments in this film where it just gets so slow and bogged down. And the thing was, that didn't happen for me in Batman versus Superman. Even during some of the slower parts, I was still entertained because we still had some great performances from Ben Affleck in there, and Henry Cavill, and they were really carrying the story along quite nicely. And I don't know, it just was a better use of time. I felt like the 2.5 hours felt a lot shorter with BVS. Felt a whole hell of a lot shorter. This felt like it was a 4 hour movie. I thought I was watching Lawrence of Arabia half the time, but except it wasn't as memorable. Not by far. But just I'm comparing it due to the running time of it. So yeah, guys, 55 minutes into this review, and this kind of has gone as long as my Age of Ultron review. I pretty much said all I can about this film. Wasn't thrilled about it, not in the least bit. I thought it was quite boring. Uh, I'm gonna give this movie about a 4 out of 10. Um, the fight scenes, they're entertaining though not memorable. I still do like Robert Downey Jr.'s performance as Tony Stark. It's really over the top, and a lot of the quips he has is really good. But this is Captain America, and Tony Stark completely overshadowing Captain America in his own movie was something that they should have realized was happening in this film. Right from the get go. Guys, I didn't enjoy it a lot. All right. So, guys, you have any questions or concerns, or you want me to like answer for some of my sins that maybe I committed in this video, go ahead. Maybe I'll make a video response to it. All right, guys. See you next time.